Hey all, Ginger Ninja here and welcome to a new video and the first of our tier list series. Today we're going to be ranking every Pokemon type based on my competitive opinions. For those of you who haven't seen this, I originally made this tier list back in Series 7, so my opinions have probably changed quite a bit, and looking at the tiers, I definitely think there's some change to be made. So to debut this series, this is what we're going to be doing, so let's dive right into it. Starting up, we have the Bug type. For those of you who don't know, this is clearly the worst type in the game. Let's not even bother speaking about it. It's got so many weaknesses and everything resists it offensively. So it's just got no place in the format really, other than maybe some support roles like Pheromosa, perhaps. And if you go to Pikalytics or Arcadex, you'll just see that literally every bug type in the format is under 1% usage. So it's just got no place. I believe Centiskorch and Volcarona are the best two right now, which is terrible. Volcarona, you just get Rage Powder support, not even a good sweeper, because normally it could be in singles, but in doubles it lacks. And I don't even know how it's worse than Centiskorch. Centiskorch being physical, not really good for it considering Intimidate is a factor. Bug type's awful here. Next up we have Dark type. This is a type that has definitely grown on me. I actually used a mono Dark type team a lot on Showdown in Series 8. So while this is supposed to be like a Series 9 opinion thing, I think it just... Oh, no, it's way better than that. All those bulky Dark types that just came up, it's honestly insane. Incineroar being the best Pokemon in the format right now, it deserves to at least be A tier. Dragon, in the B tier, it was like Gen 5, this thing was just the best type in the game, no doubt. But because we have Fairy type now, that was introduced in Gen 6, it's got an actual counter. And then Misty Terrain being a thing, Tapu Fini just destroys all Dragon types at this point. A lot of Dragon type Pokemon don't even run Dragon coverage anymore, just because of that. So I think it's definitely not a good type anymore. It's usable, but you have to find ways to counter the likes of Fini. So moving on, Electric type. Probably in A tier actually. What counters Electric? Grass and Ground. Sure, Ground's immune to it, but especially with Regieleki giving speed control to every Pokemon on your team, people have actually just used Raichu as a counter to it, and while it's good, Raichu's become more popular, many more Electric types have become more popular. It's actually crazy how good it can be offensively. Even physical Regieleki can be used. It just does a lot. Moving on, we have the Fairy type. Do I really need to say, ever since Gen 6, it's probably the best type in the game. Right now, yes, it probably is. However, normally I've been a big fan of the Steel type. I have thought it was the best type in the past. But in Series 9, Series 7 specifically, there aren't really that many Steel types to work with. It's difficult for them to even work. However, Series 8, for example, Zacian, you've got Zamazenta, you've got Dialga, you've got Solgaleo, Duskmane, Necrozma. It's crazy how many restricted Steel mons that do so well in the format that in Series 8, I'd be inclined to say it's still definitely the best type over Fairy. However, right now, I think Fairy does do that, especially with all the support Fairymon like Grimmsnarl and Whimsicott. Coming up next, we have the Fighting type. I think Gen 8, the Fighting type hasn't been that strong at all. Partially because Max Knuckle is just so weak in general. If you want a Fighting type to Dynamax, it's only got a 95 base power move at most. Even though it raises its attack, you have to stack your Dynamax boosts just so you can do damage after your Dynamax. It's not really strong at all, but the thing with Fighting type, since Fairy type was introduced, it's definitely become quite bad. You could argue B tier for this thing, in my opinion, but most Pokemon with a fighting move are just running it for coverage. I think the only thing you have right now for fighting type is just Urshifu. You could maybe argue Mienshao, but when it's supposed to be offensive and Fairy and Psychic flying being big right now, just not giving it a great time. Sure, it's good against Dark, Normal, Rock, Steel, but Ground's good against Rock and Steel. Sure, you are able to run fighting just to counter P2, but that's about it. You're not really getting much else out of it. Okay, so that was a long rant on the fighting type. So the fire type, A tier. Especially when there's sun teams about, it can be utilized really well. Charizard's damage output in Sun with Life Orb plus Solar Power and Stab max Wildfire. It can literally OHKO anything in the format other than Tapu Fini. That's how I feel about it. With support Torkoal as well, or just damage output Torkoal and Trick Room, that's phenomenal. Like it just breaks through so many types and teams. Some teams are so strong, even without Venusaur, it's phenomenal. But yeah, with Incineroar yet again being fire type, it just puts it up enough to the point where yes, you need to consider these types while team building, while playing. So now we have flying type. In a format without Dynamax, B tier. Gen 8, easy A tier. Maybe higher, maybe S tier. In fact, yeah, I'll put it there. It's definitely a top 5 type in my opinion. You use any flying type, you automatically have speed control with Max Airstream. Max Airstream is probably the best Dynamax move in the game, and there's nothing to counter it. Even if you switch in, your opponent still gets speed control. You have to run a Trick Room Pokemon if you're struggling against flying types. Especially with Landorus. Landorus is probably my favorite Pokemon to use because it just fits onto any team. The flying type, just auto speed control. It's so consistent, it's broken. However, defensively, sure you struggle against Regieleki, and then there's rock types like Stack Attacker is good right now. And Ice, but that's not really that common of a threat. Ice type, you've only really got Galastria. That's it. Ghost type. This is an interesting one because I think the Ghost type itself, it's average. Probably better than Dragon. But I think there's just some Pokemon that utilize the Ghost typing so well. If you think Ghost types, you probably only think of 3, like Dragapult, Spectria, and Dusclops. All of them can be used as support. Ghost typing is really good defensively, but offensively, I just find it to be a slightly worse Dark type. Ghost, you're immune to normal and fighting, the only type with 2 immunities. But what resists do you have? Poison? Is that it? Am I blanking? Yeah, it is only poison. So it's only good for immunities defensively. Offensively, sure it's good against Ghost and Psychic, but so's Dark. The difference between Ghost and Dark offensively, it's just a lot of things resist Ghost, whereas less things resist Dark, I think. So it's just slightly worse, but the support mons can be phenomenal when using that type. Okay, up next we have the grass type. Personally, that is where I think it is. If you think about the type on its own, yeah, it sucks. It's got 5 weaknesses, which is joint most in the game to rock, I think. And then a lot of things resist it, but then again, because Regieleki is so prominent right now, having a grass type to resist those attacks, it's just so useful. You either run grass or ground on your team just for an Eleki resist or immunity. Regieleki's running Electro Web a lot right now. You could even consider running Lurantis, of all things, with Contrary. And I know there's a lot of Lightning Rod mons as well, like Alolan Marowak, or Marowak in general. You normally want Rillaboom or Venusaur in your team a lot of the time. The Pokemon are so good, but the type itself is kinda eh. So you know what, I'll move it down a bit. Next up we have Ground type. Yet again, another A tier type, I think. Wait, what are its weaknesses? Grass, water, ice? 3 weaknesses. It's alright. But when you consider Max Quake is probably one of the most used Max moves right now, other than Airstream. And when Landorus exists, it's so good. The ground type is definitely underrated, I think. Once again, it's your best electric type counter, and electric's so good. And just that offensive pressure on the likes of Steel, Rock, Electric, and just a lot of other types for neutral. Flying, grass, and bug are the only things that are resist it or are immune. Oh, you also hit poison super effectively. I forgot. Once again, bug, not a great type. Grass, sure, used a lot. Actually, I'm going to move grass down to B tier. It's the Pokemon that carry it, not the actual type. The amount of good ground types right now, solid at least. Mamoswine for own tempo. Mudsdale, it gets own tempo. They may be physical, but they can be immune to Intimidate, which is great. Also, Lando carrying Intimidate itself, that's really good. I think definitely A tier. Ice type, it's definitely bottom 2 tiers. It's really good offensively, but defensively, what are you going to do with it? It's got 4 weaknesses. The only thing it resists is itself. Glastrier is the only notable ice type right now. I know I said Mamoswine before, but that's still like 2% usage. It's definitely a glass cannon kind of type. It does a lot offensively, but a lot of the time, if you're running an ice move, it tends to not be on an ice type Pokemon, just because of how weak it is defensively. Next up is Normal. Normal, as you'd expect, it's a very average type. 1 weakness to fighting, it's immune to ghosts. It kind of just does its own thing. A lot of normal Pokemon just get such good coverage. You think normal, it's either Porygon 2 or Regigigas that comes to mind. The amount of moves it gets, that's what carries it. You could argue for top of C tier maybe, but I think because it's the normal type, it's going to be in the middle somewhere. Next up is Poison. Honestly, I think that's the only other D tier type. It counters Grass. It counters Fairy, which sure, that should boost it up. When so many other things resist it, like Poison itself resists it, Ground resists it, Steel's immune to it, Ghost resists it, you're not getting that offensive pressure. Same thing with Max Knuckle. When you want to Dynamax a Poison type, Max Ooze is only going to be 95 base power at most. That's not good damage output for your Dynamax to have. Even if it raises special attack, it stacks, and a lot of Poison types aren't that bulky, so you don't really get to use it that much. The best is Venusaur, but it makes use of the G-Max Vinelash more than Max Ooze at all. That is just the bad Poison type. Psychic type, it's either top of C tier or mid to end of B. Actually, 1 minute. Normal's probably better than Dragon. It's a very middle ground type. Gen 1, you probably all know it was easily the best type in the game because the Dragon type did not exist offensively. It just hits a lot of the format for neutral, but then when there's Dark type, so good, that kind of puts it down a bit. If you think Psychic, you're like, oh, look at all these types. Only Steel resists it. It's good against Poison, Fighting. It does stuff very average. Indeedee with Psychic Terrain, that's good. However, it does get one-shot a lot of the time, which is why Focus Sash is quite common. And then Indeedee Hareen together, that's probably what carries the Psychic type a lot. The Rock type, this is an interesting one. I think it depends how you use it, because Rock itself, once again, it's tied for Grass with 5 weaknesses. But then the amount of good rock types at the minute, like Stakataka, Tyranitar, Rhyperior even, there's such a wide variety of rock types. Nihilego comes to mind as well. It just depends on how useful each rock type is in the situation, because they're so widespread in how different they are, even though they're all just rocks, and one's a jellyfish. So, because I'm not entirely sure, it's anywhere in these 3 tiers. So, it's not below Ice. You could argue bottom 5 because of how bad it is defensively, but it's just, it can be used A tier offensively. Just the things this type can do, and it's all varied. So I think I'm just going to put it above normal. It's definitely a weird type to rank, definitively. Steel type, yeah, I've mentioned it before. Steel is such a good type. Just being able to resist 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, is immune to 8 and 9. It resists 8 types and is immune to 1. It's broken. Just having those defensive capabilities, and sure, it's weak to ground, fire, and fighting. 3 types compared to 8 and 1 immunity. It's insane. In Gen 5, Steel was the only thing keeping back the Dragon type from, well, just being the Dragon type, sweeping every game. Steel was your only counter then. And even now, it counts as the best type in the game still. It's very. Max Steel Spike also boosting your physical defense. That's brilliant for you. If you compare it to the rest of the types, defensively, it's the best type in the game. Offensively, it's A tier. But because some of these types, they don't have the defensive capabilities Steel has, it's just there. That's why I've argued for so long, Steel type is better than Fairy type. However, in Series 8 specifically, you don't get Steel support Pokemon often, which is why it's not quite there. Series 8 rules, Steel's easily the best type. Last up we have Water. I may be biased, Greninja being Water type itself, my favourite Pokemon, Squirtle and Blastoise. Sure, you could argue I'm biased, but it resists Steel. It resists Fire. It resists Ice. It's not the best defensively. Electric and Grass are its 2 weaknesses. Sure. So what makes this type so special? Why is this S tier? Well, simply because bulky Water types. The Pokemon that are Water type, they are so strong. You think Tapu Fini, you think Urshifu Water, you think the Kingdra Politoed combo, you think Blastoise. With all these great Water types, you easily have a top 3 type in the game. The amount of good Water types there are, it just strengthens how good the type is itself. Sure, the matchups the typing has itself, it's alright, it's B or A tier. But when you consider the Pokemon with this typing, it just outclasses so many of these types right here. So that's basically my opinion on the Water type. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, follow my socials as you saw at the start. My Twitter is where I will post these tier lists. And yeah, I'm relatively happy with this for now. I don't see any glaringly bad ones. Sure, Rock is a weird type you can argue for. Ghost is also kind of a weird type. But I'm happy with where I put these bottom 4, the top 3. And everything else in between is a bit of a blur. A and B tier, because they're either good, solid. It's hard to rank them definitively. But yeah, I'm really happy with this. Another tier list video will be coming up next Tuesday. I do 5 Pokemon videos a week. I do 3 streams on Twitch a week. So follow me there. I'm hoping this channel will grow a lot more now that I've started YouTube videos. So yeah, I'll see you all next time.